Good evening, students. Glad to see you again. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Meet again with a new topic of our learning, that is describing graph. The purposes of our learning today are: 1. You can explain the definition and the uses of a graph. 2. You can mention kinds of graphs for presenters in presenting the topic. 3. You can write sentences to describe a graph with some data on the graph. 4. You can describe orally in English sentences the data based on the graph. Okay, this is about the purposes of our learning. And then we are going to know about what is graph. Graphs have two axes, the lines that run across the bottom and up the side. The line along the bottom is called the horizontal or x-axis, and the line up the side is called the vertical or y-axis. The x-axis may contain categories or numbers. You read it from the bottom left of the graph. And then the y-axis usually contains numbers. Again, starting from the bottom left of the graph. There are 4 kinds of graph. 1. Bar graphs. 2. Pie chart. 3. Line graphs. 4. Cartesian graph. What is a bar graph? Bar graph to show numbers that are independent of each other. Example data might include things like the number of people who prefer each of a Chinese takeaways, Indian takeaways, and fish and chips. This is for example. And then, secondly, pie charts. The pie chart to show you how a whole is divided into different parts. You might, for example, want to show how a budget had been spent on a different items in particular year. The third, line graphs. The line graphs show you how numbers have changed over time. They are used when you have data. They are connected and to show trends. For example, average nighttime temperature in each month of the year. And the 4 is about Cartesian graphs. The Cartesian graphs have numbers on both axes, which therefore allow you to show how changes in one thing affect another. These are widely used in mathematics and particularly in algebra. But here, Mameka's explanation just focuses on a line graph and bar graph. We just learn about the 2 kinds of graph. The first is a line and the second is a bar graph. Take a look at the picture here. This is the example of a line graph. Pay attention. And then the second example is a bar graph. Take a look on the form of the bar graph. This is an example. And then, in presenting to describe a line graph and a bar graph, you can use the following expression to start your presentation. The first expression, this graph shows blah 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 blah. The second, this graph represents blah 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 blah. The third, the graph gives information about blah 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 blah. 4. The graph above illustrates blah 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 blah. The fifth, the line graph depicts blah, 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 blah. And the last, the line graph provides information about blah, 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 blah. Okay, these are some common expressions to start your presentation. You may choose one of them to start your describing the graph. And then, in presenting a graph, we will also use some basic movements. Some basic movement expression, as I mentioned on the previous meeting, such as 1. Upward movement, 2. Downward movement, 3. No movement. There are 3 kinds of movement. For example, the upward movement, like go up, went up, increase, grow or grew, develop. Okay, this is the upward movement. The downward movement, for example, go down, went down, decrease, fail, reduce. This one. And then how about the no movement? No movement, for example, permanent, still, stable. We are going to use this kind of word to use in a sentence. We will try to make a sentences, or we will try to describe based on the example for the first graph below. Take a look on the line graph here. Okay, we are going to describe this line graph into a sentence. Mameka will give you an example for the first sentence. The line graph above shows the number of fish caught in a day. Take a look on the graph. And then the second sentence, we can see from the graph that 10 a.m. is the most fish count. Then at 11 a.m., the number of fish counts decreases steadily. When the time shows 12 p.m., the number of fish counts goes up slowly. If we compare to 7 a.m. and 9 a.m., the number of fish counts at 7 a.m. is higher than its number at 9 a.m. Take a look on the different color of each sentence. The next sentence for describing, so we can summarize that the number of fish counts at 9 a.m. is the fewest. There are only 3 fishes caught at that time. However, it is different at 10 a.m. The number of fish caught is the largest. The number of fishes caught at 10 a.m. is 10. Hence, in around 5 hours, the largest number of fish caught is at 10 a.m. Okay, students, this is some sentences as the example to describe about the first line graph. And now we come to the second example, that is about a bar graph. A bar graph here entitled Sport Magazine Readers Polls for the Best Like Sport. Okay, you have to try to understand about the meaning of the title from the graph. Okay, the title is Sport Magazine Readers Polls for the Best Like Sport. This is the bar graph. On the left side is about number of people, and then below, on the horizontal one is the sport type. There are 4 sport types: hockey, basketball, football, and baseball, based on the Sport magazine readers polls. Okay, and now we are going to try to make good sentences or good description based on this paragraph. I give you an example now. 1. The first sentence. The graph above gives information about the result of polls from the sport magazine readers in asking which sport they like best. The second sentence. As we read from the graph above, baseball is the most favorite sport as the result of readers' polls. The third sentence. Then, people who like basketball shows as the fewest number. The continuing sentence. There are only 2 people who like best in a basketball sport. The number of people who like football is larger than hockey and basketball. Finally, the largest number of people chooses baseball as their favorite sport. Okay, students, there are 2 examples above that I give you on how to read and describe a line graph and a bar graph. Try to pay attention again and try to think again. You may watch again for my explanation until you understand about how to read and how to describe the graph. Then you will practice by using a line and a bar graph below that I show you on this video. There are 2. The first is a line graph. The second is a bar graph. But after you look at the graph, make a short sentence based on the graph. Just choose one graph from the 2 graphs. You just choose a line or a bar graph. And then you should write on the comment of the video in about 5 sentences related to the graph that you choose. So the 5 sentences here as the description of the line or the bar graph. So one graph should be described in 5 sentences. Okay, student, this is my explanation. I think that you can ask if it is not clear for you. You may ask me on WA group. I hope that you can learn more about how to read a graph here. Thank you so much for your attention. See you again next week. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.